I think I'm on. Well, we're all back. You get a little rain over the week? Little rain? Boy, that smoke business, that's kind of tough, I'll tell you. That's a tough one. So, before we begin, let's bow our heads for a word of prayer. Father in heaven, we are indeed thankful for this another Sabbath day. We can come apart and worship you, dear Lord. We're thankful for this day and the many blessings that you give to us. And we pray now for the presence of the Holy Spirit to lead out and guide and direct in our lives, so that, and in this time of study, so that the word spoken here will be uplifting and we will learn more about you and your love for each of us. In Jesus' name. Amen. Well, so far this quarter, as you know, who we've been studying about? Remember? Anybody remember? Moses. Yeah, the Moses is the big thing. Erwin, welcome. And so we're on an epic journey, if you will, into the life and times of Moses. Now we start off, we were told that he was born. Okay, so that's good. He lives at home until he gets to be a kind of a loud kid, you know. And so there was a little death decree that was going on there, and so they fashioned a boat and give him a ride in the Nile. Okay, and so he's out floating there, and as you all know, the princess finds him and takes him, and then he gets to live at home for 12 years, and then he lives in the palace for another 28. And then after that time, Moses turns into a murderer. He did that, right? He killed that Egyptian. So he became a murderer, so he's off, fleeing off to Midian. He gets out in the desert and he marries Zipporah, has a family, and he's out there herding sheep for 40 years, and then he gets the call at the burning. And then he's told he's going to go back to Egypt. And then after that, the plague started, which we did last week. And we got that, and as they started there and did that, when they first went in, you know, to get Pharaoh's attention, what was Aaron told to do with his staff? Throw it on the ground and it becomes a snake. Well, the magicians, they did the same thing, right, Laura? And they became snakes too, but Aaron's rod ate the other 7. Okay? And there's a whole lot here. One of the things that I'd like to say, would you agree with this, Roger? The Egyptians were a very religious people. Would you agree with that? The obvious thing would be no, but just say yes. They were. Because, you know, they had over 1,500 gods that they worshipped. And, you know, if we just say there's a 300-year day, which is something that I think they did that back then a little bit, you know, the 300, you have to worship 5 gods a day just to get through the 1,500. So they were kind of a religious people, at least in their beliefs. And maybe it was a lot of ritual, and they just did it to be forced. Nothing was willing to be done. But they were kind of a religious people. So the first 3 plagues had to do with water. And Yahweh, God, showed that he was a master there, you know, because it started and stopped just when it was supposed to. Okay? And then the next 3 plagues were in the air. And again, God showed his dominance. And then the last 3 were from the heavens. Remember, there was hail and there was things got dark, okay? And in each instance, God showed his dominance over the gods of the Egyptians. Now, one of the things, I don't know if Scott mentioned it last week or not. Wes, you can help me on that maybe. But the Egyptian, you know, magicians and people like that, sorcerers, couldn't make lice. They couldn't get that one to work. Why? Only God can make lice. And they, even though it was bad stuff, they still couldn't do it. You know, the lice, they couldn't do that, and the flies. Well, that was the other thing. The flies and the lice, they couldn't do that because they can't make lice. So God was again showing his um, dominance, if you will. And, you know, this was all to get Pharaoh's attention, remember? To get his attention, to let the children of Israel go. Roger, I think I handed a text to Sandy to give to you, Exodus 4:23. So here we have Moses, even before the plagues start, because they didn't start in chapter 4. Here we have Moses telling the Pharaoh that if you don't let me go, let my son, which is Israel, their firstborn, we don't have a lot of time to spend on all of that, but because it's been studied before. But if you don't let them go, I am going to kill your firstborn son. So he was warned. Now, does anybody know how long the plagues lasted? I don't know. I mean, darkness was 3 days. Okay? So I don't know. Did it last a week? Did it last a month? I don't know. Maybe that part's not important. But Laura, how much would you like to have boils on you and then flies crawling on you and lice? Exactly. I would try, if I was an Egyptian, I would look to some god to find a way to get out of this. Yeah. And so I don't know how long it went on, but if you've ever had a boil, they don't feel so good. I just one little one time. It didn't feel good. It's really bothersome. And so Pharaoh had ample opportunity to change his mind. In that last one where there was darkness, it was actually 3 days that he had to think about things. And each time, each thing that happened, his heart got harder. Now, God didn't harden the heart. He just allowed Pharaoh to go his way. Okay, so here we have it. We're kind of up to date as to where we've been. But he was given all these opportunities, but alas, he chose to go his own way. Okay? So how do we apply that to us? Or can we? Well, Josh was up here saying that, we need to tug people along like Lot was. We have that. We are given ample opportunity because, I don't know, you've been paying a little attention to the news and the end time things and stuff that are happening. I mean, it's not just here in the United States. What was it in Britain or the United Kingdom somewhere, that church, somebody blew up some, killed a whole bunch of people there? Yeah. I mean, it's happening around the world. Yeah. Over there in Russia. Yeah. That's a pretty good one. So it's a do or die situation for Pharaoh, and it's no different for us. The decisions we made are life and death. Okay? Life and death. And the bad thing about Herod, though, there I go again, Pharaoh, was that, the decisions that he made, Pharaoh was Ra. He was the son of the sun god, if you will. That's who he was. And what he said goes. And so Wes, how would you like me to make decisions for you? No, thank you. And you know what? That's a smart man. That's a smart man. Tim, would you like it if I made it? No. And you know what? Tomorrow never comes, does it? Never comes. So, you see, that's smart. We don't like other people making decisions for you. I'm sorry, but, Emily, I don't want you making a decision for me. That's fine. And you see, she's understanding that too. I don't care who it is. We don't like people making decisions for us, but think of I don't know how many Egyptians there were at that time. There had to be a busload, though. Millions, okay? We'll take what she says. I have no reason to dispute that. Millions. He's making a decision for millions of people that not only his son, but their firstborn are going to die also. And so that's kind of like where we're going at for this week. It was the moment of reckoning. So let's get in. Mr. Tim, would you read our memory verse right there?
And it shall be when your children say to you, what do you mean by this verse? Then you shall say, it is the Passover sacrifice of the Lord. To pass over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt. And he struck you in Egypt.
Okay, so remember I told you Moses had been there. We were talking about how Moses had been there trying to warn. Okay, Laura, I gave you Amos 3 and verse 7. Would you read that for us? Okay, so it's Amos. This is after Moses, but Amos is proving what Moses did because Moses was a prophet of the Lord. He had warned Pharaoh before the plague started, during the plagues, and now as the last shoe, so to speak, is going to fall, he's warning him again. Okay? And last week, if you recall, Pharaoh, he kind of agreed, didn't he? Because he said, well, you men can go out and you can worship. Remember out in the desert? You can go. Or you can all get together in there, but you can't take your cattle, you can't do. So it was only a partial thing. Lord, let me do this, but maybe not that because I enjoy that. The Pharaoh didn't want to let him go because he had a lot of free labor there. So that's what he had plenty of warning. So our focus for the study is going to be in Exodus 11 and 12 this week. So if you can get there, and Exodus, the 11th chapter. Mark, are you there? Or Hunter, if you're there, whoever has Exodus 11 and verse 1. Okay, so what do we learn here? There's going to be one more, and then he's going to let you go. And how much is he going to let you go? He's going to drive. In other words, you've heard the saying, he's going to hold the door for you before he boots you out. Okay? He doesn't even want you to trip going over the door jamb or anything like that, the bottom part of the door, the sill. That's what I'm looking for. But he doesn't want you to trip over that. He's going to help you get out. He's going to encourage you to go along. We don't want you around here. Just beat it. You're done. One more plague. Mark, verses 2 and 3 of Exodus chapter 11, if you will. So now, besides being ushered out the door, kicked out, we want nothing to do with you, what else was happening here? And the people were actually paying them. They were giving it to them. Why? This was payment for slave labor, remember? They were getting and they got a lot of extra gold and silver and jewels and whatever else that Egypt had. So they were kind of crippling them financially. And people knew who Moses was and they gave him a lot. Why would they be giving them gold? Well, yeah, there could have been. But remember, what's going to happen out in Sinai? What are they going to build? A sanctuary, right? They're going to build a temple out there. Now, where are you going to get gold in the middle of the desert? You're going to put a gold mine up? No. God is doing doing stuff here ahead of time so that people, they'll have the materials necessary to build this temple. So the Egyptians are helping for further down the road, and Moses is getting all this kind of good stuff for the temple, the sanctuary that they are going to build. And so not only were they going to lose, this one more plague, they were not only going to lose the firstborn, they were going to be crippled financially, so they're going to be in a real pickle. We'll talk about that a little more later. Now we're going to skip a few verses here. Julie, verse 7. Okay, so now God is going to make an example. He's going to show there's going to be a real line, if you will. The Egyptians are going to have their firstborn wiped out. That's what it says. They were going to have the firstborn wiped out, and nothing was going to happen to Israel. So Israel was down, remember where they were at? The land of Goshen, remember? So nothing is going to happen down there. But everybody else is going to have problems. They are going to lose their firstborn. Robin, do you read or not? Or verse 8, if you will. Chapter 11 and verse 8. Okay, so now we have Moses. He's talking to Pharaoh. And Moses, what's his frame of mind? How's he feeling? He's mad. He is mad. Is he mad like Jonah because, God, I'm mad at you because I knew you were long-suffering and would take pity on these Assyrians? Was he mad at himself for, not being an effective communicator because Pharaoh wouldn't let people go? Why is Moses mad? Okay. Pharaoh's doing his own thing. But Moses is mad at Pharaoh's decision. It's a righteous anger like that of God that he's having right now. Because Pharaoh, I told you over and over, you've had 10 plagues. I warned you before they started. I've warned you throughout the whole process. And you still won't believe me. And so now that last shoe is going to fall. And he is mad at Pharaoh for his actions. Okay? I don't know. Do you think Moses loved Pharaoh? God loves Pharaoh. He just didn't like what Pharaoh did. And Moses is like God. Okay? Because he's the deliverer of Israel, correct? And so then we have Aaron. So, did Moses love Pharaoh? I don't know. It's not important for us to know, but it's just one of those silly questions, Augie, that popped into my head right now. It's like, well, why is that important, now that I think on it? So we have then a warning being given. Moses is angry at the thing. And so the Egyptians were in the grip of an idolatrous leader. We talked to Augie before you got here that the Egyptians were a very religious group of people. Because if you take a 300-day year, which I think they had back then, and they had over 1,500 gods, they would 5 gods a day just to get through them once. That's a lot of worshiping. So they're really, really into this, okay? But Pharaoh, he had a little bit of pride, didn't he? I think that he was a little bit of a proud individual. And pride kind of gets in the way of saying that I'm wrong and I should do something different. Do you like to eat crow? That's what Pharaoh was going to have to do. He was going to have to eat his own words. Okay? That's what was going to happen here. Pharaoh had to do that. And so he wasn't a happy person. His pride just wasn't going to allow him. And because the people were so brainwashed, they were being exploited by Pharaoh. And because of his decision, they were going to suffer. I mean, it starts right at the top to Pharaoh, down to the lowliest dude in the prison cell that's a criminal. If they had a family, his firstborn is going to die. And so all of those people that didn't, well, they could have had a choice. You know, because all the plagues affected them too. But they blindly followed Pharaoh. I do not believe all of them followed Pharaoh. No, that's my personal opinion. I think there's some that they saw what was going on, and they, in fact, did go the other way. That's my thinking. And so people there are going to suffer. They're just plain going to suffer. So Israel needed to be ready. They had to be, because it says right after this happens, you're going to be let go. So they had to be ready to boogie right on out of town. You know, they couldn't waste time. They had to get that sports car and put that pedal right down there, 80 miles an hour, right out of Egypt and into the desert, right? So here we go. So then if we turn over to chapter 12, and the first 5 verses, you know, that has to do with this preparation for the Passover. What were they supposed to do? What was Israel supposed to do without reading the first 5 verses? Go pick a lamb, right? What was the lamb like? Without blemish, without spot. It was, pardon? Yeah, and it, young. And then they were to take it and bring it in, right? So it becomes a pet. And they were going to have it in the house from the 10th to the 14th day, I do believe I read. And so, you know, if you just say 10 minus 14 from 10, or 10 from 14, however it works, you'd say 4 days, but actually it's 5, because you have the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th. You have 5 days of the lamb living with you. What do you do with that lamb? You kill it. That'd be like having a dog with you there, Martin, and then after 5 days, you see what I mean? It would be tough to do. They had to slay that lamb. What part did the lamb have in this? Nothing. And it represented Jesus, did it not? You're exactly right. What part did Jesus have in our sin? Nothing. There was no part. So this lamb we're getting here, it was going to be killed. That's in verse 6. And the blood, that tells us what? That's where this forgiveness, that's where the redemption of Israel comes in, because of the blood on the doorposts. If they didn't do it, they would die. So you can compare this all to the second coming and the deliverance from Egypt, because God is redeeming them from each place, okay? Just a thought question, Augie. I don't know if this is really important or not. Who do you think might be most concerned if that door was over the doorpost? I mean, that blood was over the doorpost. Yeah. Let's say you're the firstborn. I mean, that was there. Yeah, I would, mom and dad and the would think that they would be rather concerned as to whether or not that blood was there. But you see, it had to be that the blood of that lamb. Okay, verses Wes, do you have verses 8 and 9 of chapter 12, please, sir? Oh my. So now this lamb, remember, that's just been killed, and they do it by cutting its throat, and they do it, just below where the voice box is, so it doesn't make any noise, but it all bleeds out. Okay, everything goes out, and all the blood goes out, so the life is totally gone. And then what are they going to do with it? They're going to roast it. They're going to put it like on a spit. Put a rod through his mouth, run it out the back way, and it's going to go. Isn't that what they talked about? You're going to roast it, head and all. So they weren't going to dress it out. Well, you see, now that might have gotten melted off. That could have been singed off. But I got to ask you something. Just as I try and I'll eat anything one time, just about. I'm not so proud. Roger, when I was in the Army, I ate rattlesnake. Okay? I'm not proud of that, but I couldn't bring myself to eat a squirrel or a rabbit. I just couldn't do that, but I ate rattlesnake. Don't ask me why. But anyway, here we have them roasting this lamb. And have you ever eaten lamb? I have. Okay. It was up in Canada, remember? We were up in Winnipeg or something. We went to this place, and they had that, and it was their main dish, because you get a lot of different nationalities. So I tried it one time. But that lamb tasted like wool with that yellow stuff that's on there. They did a poor job. So it made it taste bitter. It wasn't nice. Because if you take and get any of that stuff on the meat, it turns it bitter. It turns it nasty tasting. And here they are roasting this lamb that had no part in anything at all, and they didn't dress it out. So, and it's bitter. Yeah. And so they don't dress it out. They don't do anything. Now imagine that. When you go deer hunting, Erwin, don't they take and dress that out right away because they don't want the bad stuff left inside, right? That's how that works. Okay. So here we have them roasting this lamb, and they're not dressing it out or anything. We'll get into that. There's a little more to that. And it says, Wes, you said something about unleavened bread. Why? Joy, do you ever made homemade bread? Okay. What's one of the things you put into it? Yeast. Yeast is leaven, correct? And so here we have them. You're going to eat unleavened bread. And when you do the leaven, that adds an extra step to it, doesn't it? And leaven represents sin. Now remember, it said here that we are going to be leaving Egypt right after this. They're going to be ushered out on the end of the sandal of Pharaoh, okay, so to speak. And they're going to be sent right out. And so here we have them, and they're, don't put leaven in it. It represents sin, but it also adds another step. They were to be ready to go at a moment's notice. Okay? No. So we're going to just go on. We'll do that. So it's a symbol of impurity. And so what is this lamb that when they did that and they just put it on the spit, roasted it, and ate it? Remember what the lamb represented? Jesus. How many bones of Jesus were broken or torn apart? None. So this represents Jesus, because if you boil it, you take all the insides out. You cut and you take stuff off the bone. You do this and do that. Now when you dress out, sometimes your joints get broken or whatever. That didn't happen. So this lamb fully represents Jesus as he was on the cross, because there were no bones broken. It was a whole, complete, but there was no blood left either, because remember, clear liquid came out after his speared in the side. So there's just a whole bunch here. So this wasn't a one and done thing. From verse 14, it was said it was supposed to happen throughout all generations. And in verse 15, it talks about no leaven for 7 days. And if you did do leaven, then there was going to be a problem, okay? One would have thought that there would have been, if you're getting ready for a trip, Roger, you're going to go somewhere, you do things to get ready, don't you? You should do that. Maybe you pack a little suitcase, you get the oxen ready or whatever it is you're going to go with, and you're getting ready to go. And but here's Israel celebrating a feast instead of getting ready. That's what it says, isn't it? Because they were to eat, have their shoes on because they were going to be out. So we're going to the next part, that Pesach or Pesach, which means, do we know what that means? Passover or skip over. That's what that word means, okay? And so verses 22 and 23, Joy, of chapter 12. Okay, so here they're putting this blood over the lintels, those corner things, and over the doorposts. It's kind of like an ark. And they're doing it with hyssop. Now, a hyssop is a plant that grows about a shrub about 2 foot tall. And you remember the psalmist says, "Purge me with hyssop." It's a purification thing. And so they're putting it on the doorpost with that. Okay? Why? Why the doorpost? Okay, that no hardware store. They're putting it there, but when you put it over the doorpost, it means that they are under the protection of the blood of God, or actually the blood of the Lamb here, and which represented Jesus. And so they put that under, and so it's the same for us. We're under that's what redeems us. It isn't like that Led Zeppelin song where you can buy the stairway to heaven. You can't do that. The only way going is through Jesus, through the blood of Jesus. That's the only way. You can't do anything else. You can't get there any other way. And so, as much, we talked about that earlier. Roger, you're the oldest one. Would you want to go out and make sure that that blood is there? I would. I'm the oldest. I would have wanted to gone out and made sure that blood was there. Yeah, every little bit, every little ounce, whatever it is, I want to make sure it's there, because I don't want to be the one that's going to, because I'm believing in this, okay? But guess what? They had to stay. That's what you read, Joy, right? They had to stay in the house, and that says they were going to be under the blood. Because when this angel passes over, this death angel, apparently the death angel goes through the front door. And he sees that, and it's like red as a stop sign. Not going in here. Okay? So away we go. And it's the same for us. 1 Corinthians 5:7 tells us that Christ is our Passover. Okay? We don't have to go through that because he did it for us. Jesus is the only way. Okay? So that blood is a physical sign of faith in action. Okay? They had to do that, and you had to believe on it by faith, because that's the only way, because that blood really didn't. It's just what it represented, so they had to do it in faith. So it was this Pesach was more than just a deliverance from the firstborn back in Egypt. It was actually the entire gospel message is what it was. Okay? One would have thought on no leaven or yeast with all of that, and there was going to be deliverance, was going to happen fast, and things were just not going to be. So that tells us, in the moment when you think not, Jesus is going to come. You don't know exactly, but you know what's going to happen. So let's go to passing the torch, and that's talked about in verse 24 there a little bit. But what is the torch? What is a torch? If you were in the UK, Britain, what is a torch? It's a light, a flashlight, okay? It's a flashlight. And so we're going to, what is the light then? What does the psalmist say? Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light. So it's the word of God. So you can see how this is going to be shared then. Passing the torch is passing the light on. They had to know it back then. It talks about the children in verses 26 and 27, and we read about that with the memory verse. So at that time, how much reading was done? Not a whole lot, because they were just a scroll, right? Isn't that what they did? They just wrote it on a scroll, and people who were, like the people in charge, like Aaron, would be the ones to read it. Not everybody could read. Oh my, I've got 5 minutes to go, and we got a long way to go and a short time to get there. But anyway, so they were going on, and who were the first teachers? The parents. So you had to pass this on, pass all this message on by word of mouth. Everything was passed on. Now you look at Addison. When she was really little and stayed at our place for babysitting when she was really young, to get her to go to sleep, we'd sing songs to her like Jesus Loves Me and stuff like that. She sings those today. She knows them. She's going to be 3 years old. So you see, kids learn when they're young and they take that with them. All right? The Passover saved the firstborn. And because the firstborn was an important part. Now, after Sinai, when they built the sanctuary, the tribe of Levi came in, and so that kind of changed, okay, after that. People at the time of Moses looked forward by faith because of the Lamb. We look backwards to the cross. Okay, see how all of that works? So let's get in then to the last part of our study, the divine judgment. Exodus 12, verse 29. Augie, you got that for us? 12 and 29. Yes, sir. Okay, that verse tells us how complete that was of killing the firstborn. Now, is midnight an exact time, or is it some other thing? I mean, we would say midnight is the start of another day. But midnight here would be the time of, what are you usually doing at midnight, Erwin? Sleeping. Okay, you're kind of defenseless at that time if you're sleeping, correct? So you're sleeping, and think of the mayhem that goes on. I don't know how many of you have ever seen these crime shows on TV, but when do most of them happen? Under cover of darkness. Roger, the stories I could tell you of Chicago and the things went on there in that town. We could trade stories on that for a while. Yep. At midnight. Yeah, when I was supposed to be sleeping at midnight and my truck is shaking because somebody's climbing in, and I won't tell you what I did, okay? So we'll go on. You can ask me afterwards or something. But midnight is the darkest part of the night when things go on, okay? And they're not good things. And so here we have the death angel going at midnight. And they had, this firstborn. They were the ones that got a double portion of things. They were the ones of money and everything. Now remember also, they'd already given out all kinds of gold and silver and jewels and gems, so they kind of already bankrupted the thing. But now they had the firstborn dying, and that one there, he got extra training because the Egyptians, they got government offices, the firstborn, so they were given extra stuff, and now all of a sudden, those people are gone. They're gone. So it's kind of a reciprocal judgment. Why? 80 years earlier, the word was given. And so here we have then Pharaoh, if he had truly repented, he could have been saved from all of that. It's the same with us. We need to pass the torch of the word along to those that are around us. We've already discussed how much we like other people. Augie, would you like me making decisions for you? Nope. See, you weren't here when we did that, you know. And everybody said they didn't want me making decisions at all for them, and so, but everybody else was kind of iffy there. But anyway, there's no doubt that the 10th plague had the greatest consequences. Firstborns were the pride of the country and the family, okay? Egypt could not keep their sons alive. The gods of Egypt couldn't do that. God was in control. And you know, we've gotten 12 chapters into the book of Exodus, and Israel still has not left. Next week, though, the Red Sea. They're on the move finally. And so we'll enjoy the study for next week. Our Father in heaven, we are deeply thankful for this time we've had to come and learn more about you and your dealings with people and how you are full of mercy and love and justice. And you are a God of justice because you need justice with mercy. Go with us each one now throughout the rest of the Sabbath day. Lead and guide and direct, and may we all continue to receive the blessing. In Jesus' name. Amen.